When we talk about social media culture, when we talk about Wanghong culture, it's not so much about the actual IP-based content. It's about social relationships between the viewers and creators. My name is Jian Lin. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Groningen, the Netherlands. I do research about social media culture, especially cultural industries in China, creative labor. I think late 2018, I went to Canada, Toronto. I joined a workshop where I met David and Stuart. From there, we discussed a lot about how China's kind of a creator culture is very different, especially in terms of technological innovation, business model, and also creator culture itself. We talked about the possibility of working on this together, writing a book together. Well, it's titled Wanghong as Social Media Entertainment in China. That book was more like a map of the entire creator industry or social media entertainment in China. Right? We use a different term, Wanghong, which means internet famous or internet red, literally. But it refers to those online celebrities. And we talked to a lot of creators, but also many agencies, MCNs, platform companies like ByteDance and Kuaishou. But we also studied policy documents, tried to kind of get an overview of the entire ecosystem. The Wanghong industry in China is really taking the lead in the entire field across the world, even compared to YouTube, compared to Instagram in the West. So that's something really fascinating for us. How could it be, if you compare what's happening now to a decade ago, when all these Chinese companies, especially internet companies, they simply copycat, copy all these Western models from Silicon Valley. But now it's like the other way around. When we talk about social media culture, when we talk about Wanghong culture, it's not so much about the actual IP-based content. It's about social relationships between the viewers and creators, and also among creators themselves. It's about community, it's about identity. Most importantly, it's about the kind of intimacy generated and how to monetize that relationship and intimacy. So I think that's the kind of main argument we try to make. And especially if you compare this to the Western social media entertainment, the level of incorporation, the level of interaction, the level of this socializing or social industries is much higher in China. For example, in the chapter of culture in this book, we talked about sociality, we talk about authenticity of Wanghong culture. And these are also the kind of two common characteristics of creator culture in the West. But the thing is, when we talk about the difference, it's always about what authenticity means in that particular social context. Right? In China, there are some videos of fishermen. They just use their cell phone, try to capture the moment of catching a fish or harvesting, etc. And they also speak Chinese with very strong accent. So for those creators, if they want to create this kind of resonance with their audience, they really need to emphasize that they are the ones who are, in Chinese we call it 接地气. It's really down to the ground. They need to speak the language that people speak in their everyday life, very different from the language people listen to on television. Like I mentioned earlier, we have this framework of cultural, creative, and social industries. Parts of Wanghong industry is still very similar to the traditional cultural industries, right? In terms of the relationship between state and companies, right? And also in terms of the presence of what we call cultural creators who used to be working for those established media. And then there is a creative industries framework, which is about those independent or private creative productions. And creativity plays a very central role in this process, in this industry. The kind of organization is usually takes the form of small to kind of media kind of enterprises. But with social industries, it refers to a larger landscape, a larger scope. It's not just about the production of culture or production of creativity, but it's about the production of social relationships. I actually have a book coming out maybe later this year, specifically about Chinese creative labor. That is a book about the labor conditions in the legacy media industries, right? Mostly like television, film, and also design. These creators are living in a bilateral subjective conditions. They are dragged by different forces towards different directions, right? In China, like the most important one or the most obvious force here is the state. And on the other hand is the market force, right? So you have to think about how to make a living. And of course, they also have their individual kind of creative aspiration. And these three forces, sometimes they could contradict against each other. But sometimes, especially for those what we see as successful ones, they manage to kind of keep a balance between these three forces. And for creator labor or Wanghong labor, right, on social media, in terms of this kind of bilateral subjectivity, I think it's still the case. But something different with Wanghong labor is this kind of very massive labor force, or the very massive incorporation of individuals and individual creativities into Wanghong production. For the traditional creative labor, it always requires a kind of professionalized training and also maybe cultural kind of taste. But for Wanghong labor, it's very diverse, right? Even for those farmers or people without any previous kind of creative experiences, as long as they know how to use a camera and they know how to speak, then it's enough. So for Wanghong creator, I think they have developed new ways of monetization. And these Wanghong creators have adopted this kind of entrepreneurial kind of subjectivity. They need to rely on themselves. They need to come up with ways of planning how to collaborate with different brands and how to monetize, how to deal with platforms, etc. I got a new project also with David Craig this year. We're going to work on the globalization of Chinese social media platforms and Wanghong culture. As you know, like TikTok is getting really big now, but also, you know, other Chinese internet platforms, they also try to go global, and they take different strategies. Some of them went quite successful, and some of them actually failed. Right? And also, we want to explore how Chinese Wanghong creators, they may go global, like Li Ziqi, right, which is a very typical figure now. And she's getting very big also on YouTube, having a lot of international followers. But we want to know why this is happening and what it means, you know, for the international digital culture or popular culture in general.